Hi, this is John Pettigrew, and you're listening to Talking Through My Hat, a podcast that explores bookish businesses, the fantastic people who create them, and what those people have learned. I'm a hat wearer, a recovering editor, and the creator of Future Proofs, enabling editors and authors to work better online. To find out more, visit wearefutureproofs.com or follow me on Twitter at John_Pettigrew. Welcome to this week's Talking Through My Hat. Today I'm talking with Laura Dawson, metadata expert and founder CEO of Numerical Gurus. After years working in and around publishing, including Barnes & Noble, McGraw-Hill, Firebrand, Bowker and ProQuest, she got involved with the International Standard Name Identifier. And on the side, she ran The Solitary Chef, a book and website platform for people who live alone. So welcome to the podcast, Laura.
Thank you.
So you've done consultancy and you've started your own businesses. How do you describe what you do now with Numerical Gurus to people who haven't come across that?
It's difficult. It's trying to explain to my mother, for example, what I do is challenging. But basically, my consultancy helps organizations with information organization and architecture. So it's a focus on metadata, structured data, and identifiers. At Bowker, I was working very closely with the US ISBN agency. And I know over in the UK, that's Nielsen. And you learn a lot when you're heavily involved with identifier management. Yeah. And Bowker had become a ISNI registry. And ProQuest, which is Bowker's parent company, decided to discontinue that initiative. So I started my own. Anyone can become an ISNI registry. It's a little different from the ISBN because it's not country specific. Okay. I started with the thought that independent authors would register because that was our primary audience at Bowker. And it turns out that my largest clientele are independent musicians.
Okay.
There's a system that's used in recording studios called Soundways, and they're also an ISNI registration agency, but they only do for bulk data uploads. They don't do individuals. So they send those folks my way. And got a lot of rappers who are interested.
We should probably, for the sake of me and for the sake of everyone listening, what exactly is an ISNI then?
ISNI stands for International Standard Name Identifier. And it is a number that gets assigned to a person's public identity. So, for example, Lady Gaga would have two. She would have one for Lady Gaga and another for Stephanie Germanotta, which is her real name, and the name she uses for songwriting credits and acting credits.
Okay. And so if the ISNI belongs to a person and not a work, that's kind of a distinction there against the ISBN.
Yes. And I do a lot of explanation about that. Folks do sometimes apply for an ISNI for their work, and I have to say, no, it's for your name, and it applies to your name across all your work. So, for example, Brian May, the guitarist for Queen, is also an astrophysicist.
Absolutely, yeah.
And as well as an activist, and he does a lot of writing and appearances and whatnot for those, different types of works. So he has a single ISNI, and then his published works, all get different identifiers, DOIs and ISBNs, etc.
Okay. And where do they get used, the ISNIs?
They're used in databases for disambiguation and collocation. So, for example, the Harvard Library,
Hmm.
has a big ISNI initiative that they're doing with Stanford Library. British Library uses them.
Hmm.
Wikipedia uses them because Wikipedia, of course, has um, a variety of different identifiers for authority control,
Yeah.
um, and the ISNI is one of them.
Okay. And I assume you have one yourself because, of course, you have
Yes,
created stuff.
yes, I do. Although I don't list a lot of my work on my ISNI page because I like to make the point that you don't need a whole lot to get one.
Yeah.
All you have to do is have something out there that we can point to and say, this is the person who contributed to that.
Okay. So you need a set of identifiers for the work as well as appropriate for whatever sort of work it is, presumably.
Yes, yes. So for me, I have published a book of short stories and it has an ISBN.
Yeah. Okay. Excellent. I mean, you seem to have spent over the last few years kind of doing quite a lot of things at the same time.
Yes, I'm also, I work at HBO as well, and as a metadata analyst there.
Do you find that world of media, of TV and this kind of stuff?
Yeah.
Maybe for those on this side of the pond who don't know who HBO are,
Ha!
but it's quite a different world to publishing in some ways. Has that transition gone smoothly for you, or is it a whole different world of pain and fun?
There are some comparisons, product metadata kind of is what it is, a
Yeah.
catalog, you know, um, but there are also incredible differences. And it's funny, I was having lunch with an old publishing colleague yesterday, um, and we were talking about how publishing really isn't investing a lot in tech.
Hmm.
And seems to have plateaued innovation wise around 2010, I want to say.
Hmm.
Um, it really, once they nailed ebooks, they seem to have decided, okay, we're done with that now.
We've done the least we
Um,
can get away with. Let's stop.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And so when I left ProQuest, I was kind of like, I don't think there's a whole lot there for me anymore because I really love um, learning new things.
Hmm.
So when I saw that HBO was looking for a metadata analyst, I thought, well, I think my skills are pretty transferable.
Hmm.
Um, and the person who was doing the hiring, who's now my manager, had come from Pearson.
Okay. So that's yeah.
And so I sent her a LinkedIn invitation, and I said I wasn't even overtly fishing for a job. I was
Yeah.
just, saying, can you talk about this transition? Because it's kind of fascinating to
Hmm.
me. And at that point, she said, why don't you come in for an interview? So I did, and I got the position initially as a consultant, but then
Yeah.
it turned into a full-time position. And what I found is that this business really embraces innovation and technology. They have to, because screens, which is where this media gets
One way
consumed,
or another.
yeah, screens and cameras are constantly evolving,
Yeah.
and tech standards for these things are changing at such a rapid rate that they can't even get the standards documented before they're on to the next one. So yeah, it's a very rapid pace, and of course the business is also evolving because the
Yeah.
ways in which consumers get their media are always shifting. So um, I over the it's called over the top, which is
Yeah.
streaming basically. Consumption really hit this business like the asteroid. Um,
Yeah.
and
Well, it's all very much wrapped up in cable companies over there, wasn't it, before?
it absolutely was.
I suppose that was their retail channel, effectively.
Yes, yes. And now companies are dealing with direct to consumer, which is, in many ways, it's great because it means that we can get consumer data that we didn't have access to before.
Yeah.
Um,
And does that actually work? I mean, obviously, one of the big discussions that's been ongoing in publishing for quite a while is the total lack of actual customer data that publishers have, because they go through these channels that they don't get anything back, really. They should do,
yeah,
because now they're going through these channels that know a lot, like Amazon.
right. But
and
Amazon will
stuff.
never
But it doesn't
share
come
that.
back.
Right.
Do the TV they're getting that back through, because I mean HBO over here, for example, there's no HBO. You get it here through Sky,
Right.
or through Virgin or something, and that's where you're going to get. That data does go back to them?
Some of it does, but not all.
Okay.
Um,
There's still a certain amount of walled garden
right.
kind of mentality going there.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. It would be interesting if Sky decided to broadcast, some of its British programming in the U.S. And we haven't seen any of that. BBC and Channel 4 have teamed up with a service called BritBox.
Okay.
And they broadcast a lot. So I can see QI, I can see, a lot of stuff. Last Leg, for example, which I love, I adore. So I don't have to rely on BBC America for everything. So
yeah. So I mean, of the the different things, I think one of the things that I mentioned that you kind of list is the Solitary Chef. You did a book and a website and stuff.
Yeah.
What, a couple of years ago now?
Yeah, it was a couple of years ago. It was. I have had to take down the platform, but the book is available. So that's out there if people want to do it.
I suppose one advantage of the book over the modern digital era is that you don't have to keep paying for it after you've produced it.
Exactly. One and done.
There's an artifact out, which is the plus and the minus, interestingly, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
It's static, but hey, on the plus side, it's static.
Right.
Yeah. So, I mean, you were working in publishing, you'd had that perfectly sensible kind of career doing that kind of stuff. And then you set up your own things. You were doing sort of chef, you were doing numerical gurus. Mm-hmm. Why did you make that jump from working for somebody else to working for yourself? Just so that people kind of have that context for you.
Any time I've done that, it hasn't been voluntary, put it that way.
That's a familiar story, yes.
But I love it. And that's why I've continued with Numerical Gurus, while I'm working for HBO. Because there's just something so creative and fulfilling about having your own platform. You could say what you want to say. You can, you can create things instantaneously almost.
Yeah.
You don't have to go through a million approvals with dependencies on developers and, all of that. You're in charge. And I just have the kind of personality that really thrives in that kind of environment.
Yeah. Has it gone the way you expect? I mean, did you have, when you kind of set up Numerical Gurus, did you have a plan? Or was it a case of, I'm going to try this and see where it goes? And has it gone the way you expected over the last, how long's it been going? 2-3 years?
3 years, yeah.
3 years, yeah.
It kind of has. My clients tend now not to be publishing centric, but information industry centric. And I also have one video client.
Okay.
It's, the problems, a lot of the problems are the same. Data normalization, discovery, that kind of thing. Which service should we use? Can you explore all of them and get back to us with a recommendation? That type of thing. So, yeah, it's just because you shift industries doesn't mean that you're shifting the problem set that you're going to solve.
Yeah, I think that's what's so interesting about it, isn't it? That a lot of metadata is going to be very common across a whole schmear of
Yes,
different. I mean, not even just the information industries, because it's data,
right.
and it's how do we tell people about stuff? How do we make it discoverable? How and all this kind of stuff. The questions are going to be quite common in different contexts.
Right.
So, I mean, is that? Do you find that it's this thing? As you said, you've already expanded it out. Do you have a neat sense at the moment of of the questions you're answering for people, or is that itself evolving?
Yeah, it is. My consultancy was heavily product based
Uh huh.
when it started. There's such a focus on consumer data now, though,
Mm-hmm.
that things are shifting in that direction. Um,
Okay.
People or companies really, really, really are examining down to such an incredible level of detail what their consumers are doing with their stuff.
Are they obsessing in the same way that publishing kind of talks about
Yeah.
that it's having a difficulty getting any? I mean, some people do. I've had a couple of really interesting conversations about people who do have that kind of information about what people are doing, but they tend to be platform people rather than the content creation people who get the data.
Right.
I mean, are other industries better about that transparency? You mentioned TV is doing better at that than
Yeah.
publishing is.
Yeah, because they have the direct to consumer, channels open to them. Publishing really doesn't, with some few exceptions, like O'Reilly.
Yeah,
But O'Reilly, I think, is the exception that proves the rule in every
definitely. Yeah.
case.
But it's quite, even for TV, as you said, though, it's a change in the last decade from the kind of, it used to be cable companies
Yes.
had all of the data and
Yes.
the production companies wouldn't have got it at all.
Right. Right.
And how have they gone through that transition? How have they managed that? Is it just that they've gone, actually, we don't need cable anymore, we're going to go direct?
No, it's a shift. It's not a cutover.
Mm-hmm.
So it's more like, okay, we're going to invest in direct to consumer because we know that's a growing area, but we can't. We still have to deal with the cable affiliates.
Yeah.
We still have to deal with additional services like Amazon and Hulu, for example.
Yeah.
HBO has agreements with those companies as well.
Well, I say this is it. The OTT services haven't eliminated the middleman. There are just some new ones that come up.
Right.
But
Exactly.
have they been better at transparency? I mean, you mentioned Amazon, of course. They're a big player in video.
Uh-huh.
Are they better with data in the video space than they are in books?
In terms of getting data back?
Yeah.
No.
Okay, that's in a sense reassuring.
Yeah. I think the strategy is diversification rather than, we're going to put our eggs in this one basket and just, run with that.
Yeah.
And publishing doesn't tend to have the same opportunities for diversification, especially since bookstore chains are not faring too well these days.
Well, it's interesting. One of the recent podcasts we've just done, I was talking to Asi Sharabi of Wonderbly, and of course they were built from the ground up as a consumer play.
Right.
Because it's all customized content, personalized content, they have to sell direct.
Right.
And that thing of that he was saying, they're always iterating over that data over what their customers are doing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, do you find that the TV world has more of that? And you mentioned music. You work with music space. Are they having the same kind of conversations, or are you not so much part of that conversation?
Those conversations really are focused, again, on the streaming platforms. Independent musicians are really jockeying for position on those platforms. So their concerns are more about discovery. And they tend to be very savvy about that.
Yeah.
And really concerned about their metadata, which is something, as a metadata geek, I find very refreshing.
Yeah.
they're, that's their main concern. Their primary markets are bifurcated, right? So they've got the streaming services, Amazon, Spotify, Pandora, iTunes, and then they've got selling direct. That's kind of where they're at. And of course, if they're independent, they are seeing as much data as they can get. But again, it comes down to what are the platforms willing to share with the creators?
Yeah.
So,
because if you're a small independent, you can't build your own.
Right.
Yeah. But it's still, as you said, if you make your own metadata as good as it can be, you're maximizing
exactly
your chance of being discovered. It's, again, those conversations are going on in publishing, but they tend to be a bit buried.
Yeah. Publishing has always, for as long as I was in it, has always relegated those discussions. People used to talk about the metadata ghetto. They were very isolated departments and not really plugged into the health of the rest of the company. When I was at Firebrand, that Firebrand as a company really tries to fight against that and try to put metadata kind of in the middle of the company rather than off to the side.
Yeah. So metadata, in a sense, as we say, it's so central to
everything.
To anything, yeah. If you expect to sell something, someone has to be able to find it. So if you want it to be listed on Amazon, you have to give them decent metadata, etc., etc.
Right.
It's kind of the conversation that we had, that the industry was having, 5 years ago, 10 years ago and stuff. They were so obsessed about piracy in publishing and music as well.
Yes.
And which there were people trying to say, actually, the problem isn't piracy, the problem is discovery.
Right.
If the first thing you need to do is to make sure people can find your stuff.
Right.
Then you can worry about if they're stealing it. But first of all, you've got to make sure they can find it.
Right.
Is that still the case from your perspective, or has that battle been won one way or the other in the different sectors? Are there same conversations happening in different places?
I think the conversation will always be happening in music and video. I didn't, I haven't seen it so much in the book world. It seemed to have been a fad. Really, it was like, okay, what are we going to worry about now?
Yeah. And
I think that's because publishing has there's been a resurgence of print.
Mm-hmm.
So print is tougher to pirate.
Well, it is. But I mean, what I worked in education for years, and one of the things that I was fascinated to discover is that piracy of print is a real issue in non-fiction.
Well, yes.
Because they will take a book, strip the spine, scan it,
right,
reprint it, and sell it for a quarter the price, a tenth the price.
Yes. Yes.
List it on Amazon and stuff.
Right.
It does happen.
Yes.
It's fascinating.
Yeah.
But people don't get stressed about it in the same way they did when digital turned up.
Right. Because I would say in trade publishing, it's not so much of an issue. But definitely in education, it always has been. Because your textbooks, the cost of your textbooks competes with your beer and pizza money.
Yeah.
And students are innovative and enjoy doing things unconventionally and sticking a thumb in the eye of big textbook. They can be very highly motivated to
the US college market is particularly odd.
Yeah.
Internationally, it's the US college market is it seems its own unique, wonderful, strange thing.
Yes.
Particularly in terms of pricing. It's mad.
Yeah, I'm actually back in school now. I'm getting my master's in library and information science. So the whole textbook conversation, to see it again after 30 years, it's like, wow, the same issues are still applying. The one difference I've noticed is that the materials that get assigned are by and large available online, and instructors are, I only bought one textbook this semester. Everything else I'm picking up online, either through the library, but
Yeah.
it's a digital article, or on the open web.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. So it's kind of an interesting kind of segue there. You've gone back to do a master's degree. I mean, how do you go about learning to do things better, to do numerical gurus better and stuff? I mean, from the sound of it, formal education is a thing. I mean, do you like
Yes.
reading books in your market? Do you read business books, for example, or do you kind of go and learn from people and this kind of stuff? What's your preferred way of learning?
I turns out I'm really good at school. It's not for everybody,
Yeah.
and that's everybody has to learn, following their own patterns. But school happens to be something that I kind of took to very quickly again. So there's that. Also, my learning style is to learn by doing. So I have to make a lot of mistakes, which, if you have any degree of anxiety, or you are the type of person who's good at school, making a lot of mistakes is extremely anxiety producing.
I was thinking they're quite conflicting modes.
Yes, they are. They are. But doing things the easy way has never really been the way I get things done. So yeah, it's a mix of things. I have to try things out. I have to throw a lot of stuff at the wall, and I have to sit through a lot of lectures as well. And that's just, everybody has their own style. Some people do really well picking up what they need to know through podcasts, or watching videos, or talking, exchanging.
Yeah.
So it's really going to depend. And I think what it is, the key thing was to realize, to spend some time with myself and realize what worked.
Yeah, well, that's it, isn't it?
Yeah.
So when you're thinking about running your own business, running your medical gurus, what is it that you personally find hardest about it? And how do you kind of get past that? Particularly, you haven't got a big team around you can just pass the hard things on to.
Right. Yeah. The hard thing is finding the time. And the second hardest thing is the hustle, getting clients.
Yeah.
That's
that sales side is not your natural place.
No. And the HBO thing does tend to kind of overshadow people's perspective of what I do. So it's kind of like it can be a limitation in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
People see the HBO thing and they're like, oh, Game of Thrones. And I have no access to any spoilers, so I'm really no help there. They guard those sets with armed guards.
I bet. So what have you learned about yourself from running your own business as opposed to working for other people?
That there are drawbacks to both situations, but doing both allows me to kind of compensate for those drawbacks. So
best of both worlds situation.
Exactly. Yeah. So when I get annoyed and frustrated because company policy means I can't speak out about something. Well, okay, that's fine. That's one area of my life, but the other area I can speak out about anything I want.
Yeah.
So it's just a question of switching hats.
Okay. Yeah. And what's the thing that actually you say it's hard to make time outside of HBO to do the numerical guru stuff? What is it that keeps you coming back to it?
Just the fact that it's mine. And a certain amount of sunk cost fallacy. But also just the creative aspect of it. It's my company is my art.
That's a lovely thought to end on. Thanks very much for your time, Laura.
Oh, absolutely, John. It was a pleasure.
This was Talking Through My Hat, a podcast by John Pettigrew, founder of We Are Futureproofs. Please let me know your thoughts by leaving a review at Apple Podcasts or by commenting on the website myhat.wearefutureproofs.com. You can subscribe to this channel at Apple Podcasts, Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. Our theme music is from hooksounds.com.